Oh boy. He's only got time for one more review.
Well, so Patrick, we just got done talking about the fall of the Roman Empire, and that kind of ended on a Debbie Downer, now didn't it?
You're gonna die.
I am?
I'm sorry. Yes, fall of the Roman Empire. Samuel Bronston and Anthony Mann. Yeah. Isn't that some kind of have some kind of relevance to what we're talking about today?
Yeah. So let's talk about El Cid, something really upbeat and amazing.
Yes.
So, Patrick, what was your introduction to this movie? How did you hear about this movie and everything along those lines?
Okay, Anthony Mann's El Cid. First time I saw the film was a long time ago. I'd say, like, early adolescent years. I saw it on television, and then years went by before I managed to see it again. Back from my early memories, mostly I just remembered. I remembered moments of it more than the actual thing. I remember the early sword fight between Charlton Heston and the King's Champion more than anything else. That really left a big impact on me. And I remember the scene with Lazarus very, very vividly from my childhood. But a long time went by before I managed to see it again, courtesy of you for being able to give me a very nice digital print of the movie. So I rewatched it not that long ago. And so, yeah, in total, I've seen it two full times, plus rewatching a few clips here and there. So I saw it very early on, and then rewatched it not that long ago. That's my basic history with El Cid.
Well, mine's a little less complicated than yours, I guess. I have almost no nostalgia for this movie at all. I don't remember any sword fights or anything like that. What introduced me to this was when I was getting interested in the composer Miklos Rózsa. And I just started discovering that he scored this movie called El Cid. It kept popping up as my recommended tabs on YouTube, like, listen to the El Cid score. And I was like, what is this? And I listened to the score, and it was, oh my god. I mean, it's Miklos Rózsa. But the thing... So I started looking up, what is this movie? And I discovered that I recognized a name, and that was, other than Charlton Heston, of course, I recognized Sam Bronston. Sophia Loren, yeah. I recognized Sam Bronston, and I was like, okay, oh, yeah, he made King of Kings. Was he like some kind of epic nerd? And I looked him up, and I was like, yeah, he is. And so I found 55 Days of Peking, Fall of the Roman Empire. I discovered Sam Bronston truly at around this time period, and I was getting into epics like there's no tomorrow. Like, I just got Dr. Zhivago, I had just gotten Ben-Hur on Blu-ray, the Ten Commandments on Blu-ray, so I was on an epic kick. So I said, fuck it, I'll buy The Fall of the Roman Empire and El Cid and a double bill case that they came in. And unfortunately, 55 Days of Peking has not had an official release here in the United States on DVD, which is unfortunate because that movie, I think, genuinely deserves it. And I recently found a really good restored version online that came from a European rip, and I was very impressed by how well they restored it, including putting in the correct aspect ratio 2:201. Anyways, enough geeking out about that. But I found El Cid, and I watched El Cid, and it just blew me away. I don't know if you could agree with me here, Patrick, but this is probably one of the most beautiful epics, visually especially, ever made.
I would agree 100%, and we're not alone in our appreciation for this film. Martin Scorsese has gone on record in saying that he thinks it's one of the best epics ever filmed.
Yeah, he fucking adores this movie, and rightfully so. This movie is just gorgeous right from the get-go. And I think overall the movie is just good. I mean, you have a beautiful score by Miklos Rózsa, that goes without saying. We have some of the most gorgeous cinematography put forth in a film like this ever. Like, just really just beautiful. The sets are so breathtaking. All of them have such a level of detail to them that, quite frankly, is lacking today in movies. I mean, these sets are just gorgeous. Like, you could have filmed the whole movie in there, and you wouldn't get tired of seeing anything. They're just so full of detail. And then there are the costumes. Everything was just handmade for this movie. Everything was accurate down to the slightest detail. This movie is gorgeous. And who can forget just the thousands upon thousands of extras that are used in this movie very, very well. Especially in the second half of the film.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this was really... If the fall of the Roman Empire was kind of the fall of the Bronston Empire, this was the birth of the Bronston Empire. Because he had released this movie and King of Kings as kind of like a double bill, where Nicholas Ray directed King of Kings and Anthony Mann directed this movie. Those two were being made at around the same time. This one brought together the main crew for Sam Bronston, mainly in the department of being co-directed by Yakima Canutt, who directed many of the portions for the Chariot Race on Ben-Hur, and also bringing together two people in particular, and that is John Calasanti and Julian Moore, I think that's what his name is. Forgive me if I said his first name wrong. But these two were great set designers, and they worked with Bronston from El Cid all the way to Circus World, which was truly the last motion picture of the Bronston Empire. And, oh my god, I can't say enough about these sets. I mean, one that really just sticks out, there's a couple that really stick out in my mind. There's the winding stairway. You know where Sophia Loren at the beginning of the movie is waiting for Charlton Heston to return, and there's that stairway, that the walls are red and everything, and you have the pillars there. That set just blew my mind, just how wonderful the symmetry was in that set with the pillars and everything. And we also have the King's Hall, which is where like all the trial scenes happened, where you have just the people lined up on either side of the room, the king in the dead center of the room. And what's fantastic about these sets is that they were just fully three-dimensional. Anthony Mann liked showing the ceilings of these sets just to show how massive they were, because a lot of times if you build a set like this was the case for Ben-Hur, they would often just shoot, down to hide the fact that they have all the lights up in the ceiling. No, these were fully three-dimensional sets. And Anthony Mann perfectly pulled these off. And the final set that I really want to just freaking hail is the one where the king's deathbed. The king's deathbed, where like the cross is leaning over him, is such a gorgeous set. And I mean perfect symmetry in all of these sets and all of these areas. And that's because a lot of these were based off of Renaissance paintings. These were based off of paintings, and that was how Anthony Mann and the cinematographer of the movie, the director of photography, said to stage this. They wanted to stage it like it was nothing, like every shot was literally a Renaissance painting. And it's perfect. I mean, every shot in this movie is just so artistic and so full of life. It just blows you away. Mm-hmm. Utterly blows you away. I don't know if you have any particular sets that are in your mind, but
I'll just say this: if you can get past the notion that medieval castles were in fact that bright on the inside, which they were not.
Which they were not. You're right.
which they were not, because they didn't have the luxury of having gigantic light bulbs like the film crews did.
Right.
But if you get past that, the sets are absolutely amazing. They are very, very, very beautifully made and photographed and such. The staircase, probably again because of my childhood memory of that first sword fight, really does stick out in my mind more than anything. I just think it's an all-out great-looking film all the way through. Whether it's interior, exterior, whatever, the whole thing, to me anyway, is just one gorgeous, beautiful, gigantic, elaborate, visually stunning experience all the way through.
Right. It's gorgeous. I can't say that enough. This film is just freaking gorgeous. And above that, this was a great stepping stone for Sam Bronston and everything, because this was an inexpensive epic. This movie cost $6 million, and of course he had, $6 million is certainly no small penny in 60s money, but I mean, considering the fact that Ben-Hur was, I think it was 18 million, somewhere around there. And a movie like The 300 Spartans was $12 million and everything, and King of Kings was $12 million.
Which you gotta say, 300 Spartans does not show off its budget anywhere near as much as this one does.
Yeah.
Not even.
If somebody told me that this budget was less than half of that of Ben-Hur, I would be shocked. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I would be shocked, because this movie it looks way bigger than what it actually is. Mm-hmm. And I freaking applaud them for being able to pull that off. But you see, what saved this movie a significant amount of money, it truly did, was the fact that all these castles we see for exteriors were really there. They were already there. So they just kind of like built kind of huts and everything around them, like villages and stuff. But they didn't have to worry about building these gigantic castles. And that saved them a ridiculous amount of money. So this was a great way to start off if you want to make your empire being nothing but epics. This is a good way to start. Work with what you have. And I applaud the filmmakers for doing that. I really genuinely do. That's quite frankly how I think movies should be made. Look with what you got and see what you can do with it. Mm-hmm. And of course, Sam Bronston had to deal with Franco and everything, and Franco helped as much as possible to make this movie. Franco was the dictator in charge of Spain at the time. It was pretty interesting. And because they didn't have to throw all this money into the making of these castles and everything, they could focus on the interiors. And that's why the interiors, specifically in this film, over any other Bronston movie, look so freaking good. Because in 55 Days of Peking and The Fall of the Roman Empire, everything in those movies were built. They weren't original. Everything was built. And though that may be more impressive on a filmmaking standpoint, this made them focus just more on the interior, and that's why the interiors, quite frankly, look the best in this movie. Mm-hmm. And Colasanti and Moore could just focus on them over and over again. Now, we talked a lot about Anthony Mann in the first part of the 30th review special. Thank you, Patrick, for doing such a great job at that, since you know more about him than me. So I wanted to ask, how does this film rank to you, since you've seen more of his movies than I have, in his filmography list?
I would say it's a kind of a toss up between this film and a 1953 film he made called The Naked Spur, which was and let me just say this is a further testament to Anthony Mann as a director. These two films, visually as well as in terms of resourcefulness, they are absolutely opposites of each other. The Naked Spur is a small like 5-character movie set in the wilderness, and doesn't have any like man-made sets, doesn't have like a cast of thousands, doesn't have a gigantic soaring budget, doesn't have not the amount of resources that Anthony Mann had at his disposal in this film. It was mostly more of a psychological western, more of a mind game kind of movie. Totally different from this, but I would say my favorite would be either that one or this film, El Cid.
Really?
I think both are exceptionally good films on their own in their own ways. They're totally different kind of movies, but I think when I think of Anthony Mann, these El Cid and Naked Spur come to mind first and foremost for me, anyway.
It is a testament that he could go from one to the other so well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It kind of reminds me of Robert Wise, how he can go to like a science fiction, scientific movie like The Andromeda Strain, and then go and direct the musical like West Side Story.
True, yeah.
But even then, those movies were different than this. But this is Anthony Mann's first true epic. He wanted to make epics since he watched Quo Vadis, which was also made in 1953, which was the highest grosser that year for any movie released in the United States. And he was hired to direct Spartacus with Kirk Douglas, but for some reason Kirk Douglas didn't like him, so he fired him. There are multiple reasons why that happens, but stay tuned for my Spartacus review if you want to learn more about that. Plug. But anyways...
Do you like oysters and snails?
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right.
I couldn't resist.
That scene caught me off guard, I'll tell you that. I forgot that was in there. But anyways, back to El Cid. Man, did Anthony Mann just come back from being fired from this gigantic movie with a fucking bang. Alright, first off, this movie had less than half the budget of Spartacus. And this movie, in many ways, looks slightly bigger in some cases than that movie. Anthony Mann sure came back with a bang.
Yeah.
And which is kind of funny because just considering, we'll get into this just a tad bit later, not too far away from now, but this movie was very, very right-wing leaning, while Spartacus was very left-wing leaning. It's very funny. But I just think Anthony Mann was just excited to direct an epic, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But Anthony Mann, what I like about his epics, his two epics, this and Fall of the Roman Empire, is his use of fire and smoke. He uses them so well in his films. And the greatest example I have in this film, where he uses the fire to his advantage, is that there's this interior, another set that's fucking phenomenal, where you have Tremaine and the Cid. They're sitting, they just got married. And there is this wide shot that is shot through a fireplace, and you have a fire flickering just in front of the camera, and it's splitting both Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston in half, like keeping them separated. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, holy shit, the symbolism is just drooling off of that scene.
Yep.
Oh, wow. I just love his use of fire and smoke. And even when like the camera's not moving, you'll have like a torch in the background or some sort of fire in the room, and that keeps your eye on the camera because it's moving, or on the shot because it's moving wonderfully. He captures fire and smoke so well. I haven't seen him do it in any of his other movies, but man, he nailed it here.
He did.
So I don't know about you, Patrick, but did you know that El Cid was based on a true story?
No, really?
And by true, I mean 90% legend.
Wait, was the real El Cid? What was Charlton Heston's like ethnic background, like German or something like that, or
something like that? Well, maybe Charlton Heston actually was the real Cid, and he just like traveled forward in time.
I believe that.
Yeah, I believe that too. Me too.
I mean, he uncovered that still ingredients made out of people, so the guy can do anything as far as I'm concerned.
Could do, yeah. But anyways, this was based on a true story, and by based on true story, I mean the story itself is mostly legend. But this was mainly this movie is nothing but one gigantic allegory for the Franco regime in Spain. And, for example, the Cid, played by Charlton Heston, is loyal to the crown. He's loyal to the monarchy, even when he's given such a big victory at the city of Valencia, where he's offered to be king. People are begging Charlton Heston to be king, but yet all of a sudden he says, no, I've taken this in the name of the king, Alfonso, which is exactly what frickin' Franco did when he took over Spain after the Spanish Civil War. And also at the same time, you have this scene where the king exiles the Cid, and that actually happened to Franco, where he was exiled, and then he came back with an army. You know, this was nothing but one giant jerk off to Franco, really. And it's extremely right wing. It really is. And it's very funny that this movie is so right wing when a lot of the writers on this movie were blacklisted in the United States for being potential communists. And so the biggest one being the man Philip Jordan, he wrote a lot of epics that were written in Spain. He wrote all of the Bronston epics, and he also wrote the film Battle of the Bulge. You know, he was an epic writer. But they were all socialists, but yet here they were writing this movie basically hailing a fascist dictator. And I'm like, if that isn't an example of working for a paycheck, I don't know what is. But anyway, so let's talk about the highlight of this movie, which is definitely the romance between Charlton Heston and Sophia Loren, right?
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's down.
In fact, let's want to get Sophia Loren out of the way.
I plan on it. Fuck that bitch.
Shall we just get this out of the way?
I can't stand her.
Although, all right, I will say this. I've only seen her in 2 movies: Fall of the Roman Empire and this film here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't seen her in. I know she's done some films in
I've
Italy
seen
and
her in
such,
Operation Crossbow and everything like that, and she's not that good in that either.
I'm not judging her for myself because I haven't seen anything else besides these two films. I will say this: she is a lot better here than she was in Fall of the Roman Empire.
Well, I think she had more to work with in this movie. Well, we'll get into that a little more later. But
I think she's trying a lot harder here than she was in Fall of the Roman Empire.
Well, here's the thing that I will say about Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston. Both of these actors were on their A game. Sophia Loren was an up-and-coming actress. Charlton Heston just won an Academy Award for Ben-Hur. Mm-hmm. So both of these actors were just huge. And like everybody wanted to get their hands on them. And Bronston did. And so this and that's what the attraction of the movie was. It was these two huge sex symbols, quite frankly, falling in love. It kind of reminded me
of Cleopatra.
How Richard Burton and
Elizabeth Taylor,
even though there's some more things going on there than meets the eye, but it kind of reminds me of that kind of movie where that was like the main. If you watch the trailers for El Cid, it's like Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston fuck, and
the most dazzling film ever to pass the silver screen. Never before has there been such a titanic cavalcade of majesty or whatever they said back in those days. They were so creative with trailer dialogue back in those days.
I love trailer. I love old trailer dialogue. If I ever make an epic, I want to make just one trailer like that.
Yeah. And make sure you have the font in this really like curved typeface that just kind of wipes across the screen every single time.
Right.
None of this trombone stuff, none of these inner titles on black screen.
Right.
None of that kind of stuff. You know, throw the audience right into it.
Appear on screen. There has to be like a really badass narrator. I'll get like Steve Bloom or some shit to do the narrator or some shit. But okay, so
what the hell are we talking about?
We were talking about Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston. I mean, who else would we be talking about?
Of course.
But they hated each other. Charlton Heston and Sophia Loren hated each other so much. Oh God!
You gotta tell it in the film because there's a lot of scenes between them where they're not even looking at each other at all.
Yes, particularly I think of the barn scene
and
the scene where Charlton Heston's character is dying. Mm-hmm. Those are the two that I immediately think of where I'm like, they should be locking eyes and expressing their love, but no, they're just looking away at each other, refusing to make eye contact. There is a lot of tension there on screen. It was their relationship. Not the kind
they were looking for, though.
Their relationship was so bad that Charlton Heston refused to work on Fall of the Roman Empire because Sophia Loren was the main actress in that as well. He refused to work on it because of her, and instead went to 55 Days of Peking, which he wound up hating Ava Gardner too. Maybe he's just a sexist asshole. I don't know. But
it wasn't that bad because they reunited on that magnificent 1970s masterpiece that is Earthquake.
Well, yeah, I mean the movie that puts some version of Japan to shame.
Damn you! First thing you say to me in the morning, last thing you say to me at night. I think that was that opening dialogue scene between the two of them is hysterical.
Oh, that movie is so fun because of how bad it is.
And yeah, towards George Kennedy. Did you know that you drove right through Zsa Zsa Gabor's yard? Thump.
Oh God. Oh God. El Cid.
Yeah. El Cid.
El Cid.
There's no earthquakes in El Cid.
There's no earthquakes. Well, maybe. Thank God. I don't know. But they hated each other. Do you know any of the antics that went on between those two, Patrick?
Wasn't it partially because they were disputing over who got a top billing in the film?
Yeah, Sophia Loren sued big time because Charlton Heston got top bill. And I'm like, oh, you really? you two are prominently displayed on the fucking poster. Fucking deal with it. But Charlton Heston was pissed off at that, but that was mostly in post. What happened on set was that Sophia Loren would often arrive on set late, while Charlton Heston would arrive early. He thought that she was a complete unprofessional bitch, quite frankly. And she was. She was just horrible. She would always arrive late. She'd constantly mess up her lines, which her lines are so simple in the movie. I don't quite get it. And the biggest thing that happened was when the intermission ends, there is a jump forward in time about like 10 years. I'm not kidding. And the first time we see Charlton Heston, he's really rough and gruff. He's got a scar down his face. He's all covered in makeup.
Yeah.
So, but then we see Sophia Loren, and she looks like she has not aged a day. And she was originally going to have like a wig on and stuff to make her have like grayer hair and stuff. She was going to have a few wrinkles under her eyes and stuff. You know, natural things, right? But she refused to do that because she thought it would tarnish her star power. And that infuriated Charlton Heston. Because here he was, this macho sex symbol, getting all rough and gruff and kind of looking ugly, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. Even though I still think he's got dreamy eyes. But it was tense on set. And Anthony Mann wrote several times that it was he's never had more tension on a set than between these two big A-grade actors. And to be honest, I'm surprised. If Nicholas Ray had directed El Cid, I don't think it would have worked. I don't think Nicholas Ray would have been able to handle Charlton Heston and Sophia Loren. Anthony Mann, from what I know of, had experience working with a bunch of A-grade actors before, even though they were in smaller pictures. He knew how to handle actors. And it was kind of like William Wyler. I think William Wyler knew how to handle all these actors, and he did very well at it when he directed Ben-Hur. But they hated each other. And would you agree with me that you think that the romance is really the weakest part of this movie?
Yeah, I would agree, especially since I don't feel any real romantic tension between them at any point in the film whatsoever. I mean, despite Anthony Mann's best efforts in filming,
and he does give a genuine effort, and I applaud him for doing that.
Yeah, I can just kind of it's kind of like William Holden and Jennifer Jones and Love Is May Splintered thing. I can just feel the animosity all over the screen whenever they're on screen together. I mean, in some cases, I think even if you have a good talent, sometimes you can't just get past that kind of animosity. Sometimes it's just there on screen regardless of how hard you try.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree. And what was the other example you had of William Holden and this other actress who were like really, really, really good friends and they gave a genuinely great performance? What was that example?
Okay. There's two films that William Holden made, one in the 50s and one in the 60s that were both about interracial love between an American and a Chinese woman. The first one was King Vidor's Love Is May Splintered Thing, in which the Chinese girl. Yes.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And the Chinese love interest was Jennifer Jones. Great casting on their part, right there.
Great, wow.
And
that's like casting John Wayne as Genghis Khan.
Yes, it is.
Oh, wait a minute.
The Conqueror. Howard Hughes. But in any event, Jennifer Jones was married to David Selznick at that time, who was producing the picture, and so she always came on set all temperamental and just angry and unfriendly towards everybody, and she and Holden could not get along at all. Reportedly, she chewed on garlic before their kissing scenes because she just hated him that much.
Oh, what a bitch!
But yeah, Holden and her did not get along at all, and for me, that's the big weakness of that film, is that I can just feel, they're both on screen trying their best, but I can just feel their lack of commitment, their lack of being able to cooperate with each other on screen. It's present all the way throughout the movie. Now, flash forward to 1960, William Holden makes another film under the director Richard Quine, and this one's called The World of Susie Wong, in which his co-star was an actual Asian actress, Nancy Kwan. And in that case, there was actually a lot better chemistry between those two and I would say it's probably because they actually got along very well behind the scenes. Kwan would later go on and say that Holden taught her a lot about acting and and going from stage to screen and so on and so forth. They actually got along very well off camera. And I think that kind of added to their on-screen camaraderie in the movie. And so, unfortunately, in the case of El Cid, that was not the case with Heston and Loren, because I I can feel that wave just passing over the screen every single time they're on screen together.
Well, yeah, and the biggest reason why I see that is because they never look at each other. They never look at each other. And Charlton Heston said in these interviews on the DVD, especially on these DVD, that the Cid is constantly looking towards the future. And I'm like, you're fucking dick.
Liar, liar, liar.
I'm like, oh god, okay. However, that being said, us shit-mouthing Sophia Loren and making fun of Charlton Heston aside, I generally think their first scene together is pretty good. If only for the staging. The first scene where they meet each other on camera for the first time is a gorgeous scene. Because they're in this giant round room, and they're separated. They're on both sides of the screen, and there's this beam of light shining down from the ceiling down to the center of the room. And then they slowly walk towards each other, and then it cuts to a close-up of them grabbing each other's hands. That is gorgeous, okay? That looked beautiful.
I also like the shots earlier where it's a low-angle shot of both their faces separately.
Well, one they like slightly in like a soft focus too. They like soft focus on her a little bit just to glamorize her a little more. Even though with a 70mm camera, oftentimes you couldn't soft focus because those had such precise focal lengths that it would just look like it's out of focus. But yeah, they often use soft focus on her. They really use soft focus on Ava Gardner in 55 Days of Peking. But I thought that was very beautiful. And it is kind of disappointing considering the fact that this romance was what got butts in seats, and it wasn't very good. I didn't feel like they had too much chemistry, and mainly it was because of that hostility the two actors had towards each other. And I do honestly feel that if anyone else but Sophia Loren was casted to play Shemaine, the Cid's love interest, I think we would have gotten a better performance out of it. I think we just would have had a better chance at it because the writers genuinely tried to do something with Loren's character. It's just Loren can't act for shit. She was a model before she was an actress. I'm like, that's what they did with Linda Miller from King Kong Escapes, and she did so fucking bad that even the dub had to dub her over. And
well, in Loren's slight defense, I think she's actually good in a couple of scenes here in this film.
I think she has good facial expressions. During the scenes when the Muslim army is marching on Valencia and she's overlooking them, and she looks terrified, I think she looked good there. I think she gave a good performance there. And there's one other scene that I'm going to get to in a little bit that I genuinely liked.
Is it the deathbed scene?
No.
I was going to say, I think she did a pretty good job in that later part of the movie too, with just looking kind of sorrow and kind of sorrow and forlorn. I think she did a pretty good job there as well. But yeah, it's still not enough.
Yeah, it's not enough. And here's the thing: I think the character of Shemaine could have been pretty good if given it to a different actress. Because I like the whole part in the first act of the movie. What happened is Charlton Heston has to kill her father to restore his honor. And Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston were supposed to be married. And so it's a huge part where it's like she is torn between her love of Heston and her love for her father. And I love those scenes, or what was trying to be done in those scenes. I believe you could have done something really, really good with that. And I think you had the makings of something really good with that. You just needed a performance behind it to push it along. And I don't think there was enough oomph in Sophia Loren to do it. I don't think she was... Frankly, to put it bluntly, she is a strong enough actress to do that. Someone like Elizabeth Taylor, I believe, could have done a phenomenal job at that, despite her being her own prima donna.
They could have gotten like maybe Ivani DiCarlo to probably do it as well. I mean, she looked the kind of role that you'd want for this role, and
right. But it was always going to be Sophia Loren right from the get-go. It was decided to be Sophia Loren. Sophia Loren was their choice, so she did it. However, in like the scenes where she's trying to like talk about those specific like Lorraine is trying to, she's clearly being caught between her love of Heston and her love of her father. She just looks bored, unfortunately. She looks very stiff. And the scene that really drives me nuts is the scene where she gives her colors to the champion of the king that wants to take Kalahora and make it its own kingdom during the fight scene between Charlton Heston and that champion. And she gives the enemy of Charlton Heston her colors and everything like that. I'm like, oh, come on! Just give me something to work with here. She just looks bored instead. However, I believe my favorite scene with her is actually a scene where Heston's not in it at all. And it's the scene when King Alfonso loses that battle against Ben Yusuf, who is the Muslim general in this movie. And he goes to the monastery where she is kind of hiding, or where she's staying with her twin children. And his wound is getting cauterized, and the king goes, "This was not for a lack of courage. My men did not lose for a lack of courage." And then all of a sudden the camera cuts to Sophia Loren just looking down at him very, very pessimistically, and she goes, "It takes more than courage to make a king." And I loved that scene. I thought she did great in that scene. What was the scene you thought that she did really good at?
The deathbed scene towards the end of the film.
I did like it where she turned to Mutamin, who is that Muslim general who sides with Charlton Heston. She goes, "It is my husband's wish to have the arrow not be removed." I thought she did fine there. She did fine there. She wasn't the worst thing ever. Pretty close to it, but she wasn't the worst.
It's very faint praise. She's not the worst thing ever, but she's pretty close to being the worst thing ever.
That being said, how do you think Charlton Heston
he's a lot better. Okay, all right. First and foremost, big Charlton Heston fan.
Oh, God.
Love the guy. Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur, Soylent Green, Planet of the Apes, Major Dundee.
Oh, Planet of the Apes was the movie that introduced me to
I think
Charlton
Ten
Heston.
Commandments might have been my first. I'm not sure, but.
Oh no, I take that back. It was
big Charlton Heston fan. So I like him in pretty much everything he does. But having said that, he is. I would say, even given my bias towards the guy, I think he is absolutely amazing in this movie. Absolutely amazing. Mm-hmm.
Oh, he nails it. He nails it. Yeah. And what's interesting about his character is that he's basically torn between the higher power of Spain versus his love of Sophia Loren. That's his character in a nutshell. I mean, he doesn't really have that much of an arc throughout the movie, but like every scene that he's in, you're drawn to him. And also, it doesn't hurt that Charlton Heston was a big guy. He was like 6'3". He was just built, and he was big. But he just chews up the scenery very, very well. And his relationship with Sophia Loren really comes to a head during the barn sequence after he's been exiled by the king. We'll get into more of the exile with the king a little later. But I think the barn sequence, the end of the barn sequence is my favorite scene in the movie. It was my favorite scene in the movie. Because Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston are like cuddling and being all lovey-dovey in the barn. I'm like, oh God, kill me now. And all of a sudden they open the doors to leave, and suddenly there's an army waiting for them right outside. Now, despite the logical leap of how the fuck did they wind up there?
And how long were they out there listening?
Whatever, but were they just like getting off to watching, to listening to Charlton Heston go screwing Sophia Loren?
Wait, are you sure he's doing that? Because he makes that noise all the time.
Really made Charlton Heston.
He's very, very.
I just made Charlton Heston sex noises. What's wrong with me?
Well, like I said, in your defense, he grunts all the time, regardless of what he's doing. So it can be very ambiguous. You can never be sure.
But anyways, so Heston in that sequence, he sees all these men just rallying around him, and he ultimately chooses his love of country over his love of her, which again was the commentary on Franco in Spain. First off, I love that scene. That is my favorite scene in the movie. I just fucking love it because Charlton Heston has this smile on his face that pops up, and it's like he looks boyish during that sequence when the camera slowly pulls in, and Sophia Loren is like, "But why him? Why?" And then she like goes over to him and it's like, "Hold me, Charlton Heston," and he holds her, and then he just smiles and says, "For Spain." For Spain! It sounds so cheesy the way how I describe it, but if you're watching it in the movie, it's really fucking good.
Yeah.
And also the music helps. The music is very rousing. But yeah, I just thought the barn sequence needed more as well. Because if you're supposed to feel bad for her, it doesn't succeed at that whatsoever. Because you are supposed to feel bad for her, because Charlton Heston ultimately chooses his country over her. And
I thought we were done shitting on Sophia Loren for a while. I thought we were talking about Charlton Heston.
Okay, no. All right, we're done. We're done shitting on Sophia Loren. We did that enough in the Fall of the Roman Empire. I think the best scenes in this movie are the political scenes. The scenes, for example, the trial between the King's Champion and El Cid's father, where what has happened is Charlton Heston is being tried for treason because he let a couple of Muslim prisoners live after a battle. And so the Champions is like, "This isn't a charge I'd bring lightly, blah, 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 blah." And then all of a sudden, Charlton Heston's father calls him a liar. And it's so tense, the scene, because everything goes quiet, there's no music, no nothing. And then all of a sudden, all you see is the Champion slap Charlton Heston's father. And then all of a sudden it cuts to Charlton Heston's reaction.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very powerful scene. I genuinely really liked that. Another example of the political scenes, I love it when the two princes after the king dies, you have Alfonso and then the guy who plays Acastus from Jason and the Argonauts. They're basically fighting over who's going to be king. The ultimate king of Spain.
It's gonna be Polias.
I wish it was Polias. If Polias
You'll
was
die
King
for that,
Jesus,
Jason.
this would be amazing.
You'll
die for that, Jason.
Okay, there's our Jason and the Argonauts reference for the day.
And also the final scene that I really, really like for the political stuff, there's tons of them in here, but these are just some examples. And this is my favorite one, is the unification of the Moor armies and the Cid's army. Which is, it's all done. It's done in this one wide shot. This one long wide shot where you just see Charlton Heston put his sword in the sand, and then all of a sudden, Mutamin, who is the Muslim general, puts his sword in the sand, and they just run towards each other, and they hug. And then the two armies just drop their weapons and just run towards each other, and they celebrate. Again, very allegorical to what was kind of going on in Spain at the time. And I love that scene. I love that shit. I love political shit. Alright? I love that kind of stuff. I'm very interested in that kind of stuff. And I wish this movie is just chock full of it. If you can't stand Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston eye-fucking each other, but not really because they hate each other, then you've got plenty of these scenes in the movies to calm your nerves. And they're pretty damn good.
I would agree.
I don't know if you agree with me or not, but
eye fucking each other.
Alright. So, I can tell you the best relationship in this movie, and it's not in a sexual nature at all, but I will say relationship in this movie is the one between the Cid and Mutamin, who is the Moor general. I like their friendship. I mean, I wish they had more scenes together, and I think you could agree with me on that. But I genuinely liked them, you know, and you see what it was they were enemies during the beginning of this movie, and Ben Yusuf, who is the Muslim leader who's going to invade Spain, tells him to raise armies, and he doesn't like that, but he's kind of roped into it. Mutamin doesn't like it. He's kind of roped into that. And just to show a kind of tiny detail that I like about Anthony Mann, I don't know if you noticed this, but when Ben Yusuf says, Allah be praised, and all of those generals just start praying, Mutamin does not. He stands still during that sequence, and I didn't notice this until this recent viewing. I was like, oh my god, that's a nice little detail. Yeah, he doesn't pray, and I'm like, okay, that's really cool. But anyways, they start off as enemies, and then Charlton Heston ultimately spares his life. And says, do you promise not to pick up a weapon against Spain? And Mutamin says, I promise, because he hates Ben Yusuf more. And so they kind of become friends by this. And Mutamin ultimately saves the Cid's life and the prince's life. I'm just going to call him Acastus. Saves the Cid and Acastus' life from a Muslim trap. And then they come together at the very ending, and I think it's very well done. I think the relationship is pretty damn well done. Specifically in the scene where they embrace each other in the middle of the river, and the two armies collide with each other as friends. Actually, very, very prominent now, actually, considering all the turmoil that's going on in the Middle East, and between Christians and Muslims and everything like that. Kind of unintentionally more prominent now, and more of a commentary now than it was even back then. But anyways, I thought if they had a few more scenes together to kind of flesh out their friendship a little more, I think it would have been something really good. But we didn't get enough with them, in my opinion. But it was still pretty good. Now, I also would like to say that there are minor characters in this movie that are pretty damn memorable too. And there's two that come out in my mind. One is Garcia Ordonez, who is the guy that loves Sophia Loren and says he will kill Charlton Heston for her. You know who I'm talking about? Okay. I generally thought he was a good character. Because, you know, he betrays Charlton Heston and even the prince, and the prince is like, you should kill him. And Charlton Heston says, no. I'm not going to kill him. I'm going to spare his life. A great performance by Charlton Heston, too, when he's like, you're going to be king one day. I suggest you start acting like one. And he spares his life. And also, what really strikes me about Ordonance, because Charlton Heston spares him, that kind of sticks in his head. And also at the end of the movie, where the king throws Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston's children in the dungeon, he's the one that gets her out. And then he has his little posse of guys, and he says, we will join you, the Cid. We will join you in the name of the Cid. And then, of course, there's his death scene, which is kind of badass. Because you have Ben Yusuf, who's now tied up Ordonance, and he's all beaten up and bloodied, and Ben Yusuf goes, what do you want to fight for? And then Ordonance goes, for the Cid. And all of a sudden Ben Yusuf, who gives a fucking fantastic performance in this movie, goes, then this will be a battle between our god against yours! And then his cloak like covers the screen or something to show that like he stabbed him. I fucking
that's great transition.
Love that scene. What did you think of Ben Yusuf?
Oh, I think he's a very good serviceable villain. He's got a lot. The actor who plays him gives him a lot of presence and such. That sounds about right. I think his name is Herbert Malm. Yeah, he plays the pirate in Spartacus, the one that promises Spartacus that they'll have the ships to escape to Egypt. Actor, I think his death scene's a little anticlimactic, but I think.
He just gets run over by a bunch of horses.
He doesn't even like try to fight back. He just kind of walks in front of them and just goes, ah! I'd like to have seen him go out a little more with a little more style, given how well he's presented throughout the rest of the film. But I think and he's not on screen a whole lot. He's not like a major player. He's more of an off-screen presence that comes on scene every now and then.
He specifically, you feel his presence during the second half of the movie. Like, the first half of the movie is nothing but build-up, and then there's the second half of the movie, which is actually the war between Spain and the Muslim invasion. That's essentially what it is. And Herbert Lom is very over the top in the movie. And I think it works because, for example, he never really shows his face other than in the scene where he kills Ordinance. All you see is his very expressive eyes. And I like that. I personally like that. I wish actually they never revealed his face whatsoever. Because that scene where he kills Ordinance is kind of like out of... All of a sudden you see his entire face and you're like, oh, that's what he looks like. Oh, never mind. That's not quite as cool as I thought it was going to be. And then all of a sudden he goes back to covering his face. I just wish he had his face covered throughout the entire movie. What'd you think of his first scene? The very opening scene of this movie. I think that was the most over-the-top evil performance I've ever seen. That gave Doctor Who from King Kong Escapes a run for his money.
Say, Ding Kong, Ding.
Ding Kong, Ding.
I especially like the scene where he's in the city. I can't remember the name of what it was called. But he's telling the guy, what they're gonna do and such, and it's just a lot of close-ups of just again his eyes with the lower part of his face covered up. I like that. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, he gives this stereotypical villain speech. When he goes, and he's like, "First, it will be Spain, and then he throws out his hand, the world." And I'm like, oh my god. I don't think that could have been any more over the top if they tried. Clearly, Herbert Lom was having the time of his life playing that performance. Clearly. And he's such a minor character, but yet he's so memorable. The other one that I wanted to talk about was King Alfonso, which is the guy who kills his brother. Kills his brother and ultimately...
Oh, I gotta say, actually, my favorite scene in the whole movie, if I might say so, is that scene where Charlton Heston makes him swear that he didn't... That scene is amazing.
Yeah, that scene
I love the way...
fucking great. He's such an arrogant prick during the first half of this movie. And may I just say that the actor who plays him is gorgeous. Fucking gorgeous. I preferred him when he didn't have his beard. But
well, when you're a king, you can prepare yourself to have that one. So.
Oh, he's gorgeous.
But he's in love with his sisters.
But anyways. Oh god, yeah. All right, there. He's an arrogant little shit. He needs a swift kick in the ass. Because quite frankly, his brother was the one that was more qualified. Yeah. Though his brother let arrogance get in his way as well, which leads
and he
to
made the
his
mistake
downfall.
of turning his back on some stranger.
I'm like, that scene, I'm like, you fucking idiot.
Whenever that happens in any movie, I just go like, oh, come on.
Oh, come on. Yeah. He's being led into a trap, and he turns his back, and I'm like, no, don't fucking...
Heston comes out the sword and goes, right in the guy's chest.
Yeah, and King Alfonso doesn't really become a character until all of a sudden the whole civil war happens between him and his brother. And suddenly he wants the Cid to help him, and the Cid does help him for a little bit, but then the Cid refuses because he wants him to kill his brother, and he's like, no, I will not step in on that. The Cid kind of becomes a second-hand character during that part of the movie, and it focuses more on the politics between the two sides. And he remembers that. Alfonso remembers the fact that Charlton Heston refused to help him, and so he acts on his own. And then you brought up the scene about Alfonso's coronation.
I especially like the dialogue between those two, and the way that the Heston and the king just shout at each other the entire time, like swear on it, and so on and so forth. And I just love the dialogues, and especially like the close-ups that Mann shoots as it gets more and more intense as the scene goes along.
Yeah, the scene slowly gets more and more close up on the characters' faces as the scene goes along. Because what happened was that Alfonso assassinated his brother, and Charlton Heston doesn't like that.
Refuses to swear fealty to him unless he swears on the Bible that he did not have his brother murdered, which he did.
Which of course he did, and so now he's lying to God. That is a great scene, an absolutely great scene, and of course that leads to the Cid being exiled. Thanks to you, we are all in exile. Sorry, and And then, of course, at the very ending of the movie, the king winds up siding with the Cid and goes to Valencia to fight the Muslims. And he decides to completely stop fucking his sister and instead gets a man boner for Charlton Heston. So, I mean, who wouldn't have a man boner for Charlton Heston personally, but you know. So, though we kind of talked about him a little bit, what did you think of the Cid's character as a whole? Do you think he was a good character? Do you think he was a bad character? Do you think he was 2D,
I think he's
3D?
A good character. You know, he's torn between his love for his loyalty to his country and also his love for Lorraine and his struggle to kind of like win her back in some ways, as well as, you know, do what he feels is the right thing to do for his nation. I think he's a genuinely fantastic character.
I think he's genuinely good. I don't think he has the character arc that a lot of the other characters do. But I don't think he really needed one. Because he is supposed to be kind of like this Christ-like figure. Because he's... At the very ending of the movie, they actually quote the legend where he was like, he's the purest knight of all. And, you know, that was the whole thing with them. And everything like that. Quite frankly, I think only Charlton Heston could have played him. Only somebody with the biggest presence as Charlton Heston could play the Cid. And I think Charlton Heston knocked it out of the park.
I would agree.
I think Charlton Heston did a very good job.
I think he's fantastic in this film.
I think in specifically there's one scene, and that's the scene where he refuses the crown of Valencia. And he says, I take this crown in the name of our King Alfonso. And I love the line that Mortimer says. He says, what a noble man, if only we had a noble king. I love that line, and I think Charlton Heston gives a very good performance, because I like Charlton Heston's performance, and it's very subtle, because he's tempted. He is clearly very, very tempted with becoming king. And that kind of power kind of came up earlier, that kind of power-hungriness of him kind of came up earlier in the scene where all those men says, we will fight with you, the Cid, in the barn. And he gives a small smile. You can tell that he loves it. He's eating it up. And then he says no. It's like he refuses the temptation and says no, which I think was a very good character thing for him, and kind of made sense. So what do you think of the ending specifically? Him being propped up on a horse.
He just put him on a horse and just go. There you go. And the Muslim guy goes.
Well, that's a great reenactment of the ending.
But anyway, I think it's actually very poetic. I love the final wide shot of the horse just galloping along the shoreline, and just as it passes the edge of the frame, fade to black, end of movie. Love that.
Yeah, right. And I also love the scene where he steps out of the gates, and all of a sudden there's like this blinding flash of light almost, and these epic church organs just come in. It's big. This movie knows how to be big and theatrical, and I admire it for it. And this actually happened. You can't, as ridiculous as this sounds, of him dying, because what happened was Charlton Heston got shot with an arrow, and he basically bleeds to death. Charlton Heston, the Cid, this really happened. This is history. This is fact. He said, I will write. He had basically become the moral center of the army. And so if he died, then they'd rout. Right? They wouldn't have the leader they needed. And so he said, I would ride with them into battle. That actually happened, and he actually did die, and they actually did prop him up on a horse with a harness, and he rode out, and it scared the shit out of the Muslims. It scared the fuck out of them, because they heard about the Cid, and the Cid is something from God, and everything like that. Because it actually was the Muslims who gave him the term, the Cid. Which is the term for somebody sent from God, straight from the hands of Muhammad. And so all of a sudden, they think he's dead, and suddenly he comes back, and it's like he's resurrected. They just freak the fuck out and run away. That actually happened. So you can't even really say that that's ridiculous. I mean, when you describe it, it is, but I think it's executed perfectly. The way how he just kind of gallops out and everything, yeah. What are your thoughts on the battle
sequence? The very final one?
Did you like it? Yeah, the big.
It's probably the most. It's probably the least effective of all the fight scenes in the movie. But I thought thought it was decent enough. I mean, it could have been a lot more climactic, but it was efficient enough for me anyway.
Well, the problem with there's two battle scenes in this movie. There's one about at the halfway mark of the second half of the film, and then there's one at the very ending of the film. Both of them, I think, are very two-dimensional. There's no real three-dimension to them. I think these battle scenes are very weak. The only thing that saves these battle sequences for me is the music, because the music is very hectic and very brash. To me, these battles weren't personal enough. There are too many really long, lingering wide shots. There was also not enough coordination, not enough stunt work in it, in my opinion, where it just kind of looks like a bunch of people flailing their arms around on horseback. And I thought it was too still. However, Mann did learn from his mistakes with this movie. He did. He genuinely did. That was actually one of the complaints with this movie, is that they thought that the battle sequences were too stiff. He learned his lesson in The Fall of the Roman Empire, because those battle sequences were very full of energy. However, what really steals the show in terms of the action are the sword fight sequences. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the one in the arena, or do you prefer the one between the two doors?
That's really tough.
The one inside the castle. It is tough, but I know which one I do prefer.
I'm gonna say the fight inside the castle for one reason. I love the way that we don't see the actual final blow. I love the way that they move behind the circular part of the staircase, and the camera pans along to hide them, and then we hear the death blow, but we don't actually see it. Then we see the King's champion just kind of stagger out into the open. And when we finally see Charlton Heston, he's just kind of leaning on his sword in the shadow, kind of ashamed of himself in a way. It's again, that whole scene is amazing. From a build-up to the silence at the beginning, Heston drawing the first blood, then the music comes in as they fight more furiously, then that beautiful finish. I think it's an absolutely stunning, beautifully choreographed sword fight. I think it's actually. Mm-hmm.
Well, they used real swords. Those were real, genuine broadswords. They were very, very heavy. Charlton Heston actually kept his broadsword from this movie, and it was in his office until the day he died. Yeah, he kept it hanging up in his office wherever you came to meet with him for like an acting gig or whatever. It was right up in his office. But yeah, those were real swords, guys. There wasn't rubber or anything. There wasn't any Walking Deading shit where everything is rubber, including the guns. No, everything you see in this movie, including the chainmail, is real. Like, when they wear armor in this movie, that's real armor. The only thing that was fake were the arrows. The arrows were just rubber. But I don't think you wanted to shoot real arrows at a bunch of horses.
The Shiva-footed did the same thing.
I could... Well, he did, yeah. But that was Japan.
They are.
But anyways, yeah, the sword fights are really good. The sword fights are really good, and they are just full of energy. They're beautifully choreographed. Yakima Canutt was on his A game, choreographing those. He was such a good stunt man. He was so good at being able to just make a battle so personal. And those battles were very, very personal, both of them. And even just how they're shot is just fucking gorgeous. Again, you don't need all these quick cuts to make them look so good. The cinematography, some of these shots lingered for quite a long time, but you just looked at the camera the whole time because of the movement going on. And that was really good, especially in the arena scene. The arena fight scene is really good, especially the jousting. Those are two people genuinely jousting each other. You couldn't do that today. You could not do that. Fucking unions and fucking insurance would just be going nuts.
I like in that scene. I like when Heston gets knocked to the ground. Actually, they're both on foot now. And Heston's using his saddle to defend himself because he doesn't have his sword within reach, and he's just blocking the champion sword with his saddle like a makeshift shield. I love those kind of touches.
Well, yeah, and you can just see when Charlton Heston is defending himself, he holds up the saddle, and you can see as the other man is just swinging his sword, huge chunks of that saddle are just getting lopped off. That really was happening, you know? There was no faking that. That sword was genuinely lopping those chunks of that saddle off. Very, very well done and just full of energy. Wow, those are very heart-pounding sequences. Very, very well done. I believe the arena doesn't have any music at all until Charlton Heston wins, correct? Yeah. The one inside the castle between Charlton Heston and the King's Champion didn't have music until the first drop of blood was spilled. And all you heard was the yeah, I love that. It reminded me very much so of the chariot race from Ben-Hur, where suddenly the music just stops and all you hear is the sound of the chariots. Very, very well done. Very well edited, too. Extremely well edited.
And again, that final pan behind the staircase. I mean,
it was very dramatic.
That's the scene that really sticks out for me from my first viewing a long time ago, and I can definitely see why, because it's just so perfectly done. It's very well done. Very, very well executed as well. And then there's the music by Miklos Rózsa. I genuinely wanted to put a part in here about him because the music score for this movie is so good. I mean, I hailed Dmitri Tiomkin's score from The Fall of the Roman Empire. This makes that look like amateur work. This music here, it's so big. It's so. I mean, that's what Miklos Rózsa did. Miklos Rózsa never worked small. He found his forte with epics ever since he made Quo Vadis and Julius Caesar. He found his forte, and that was making epic music. And that was actually what he was trained in as well. And he's my favorite film composer. I'm not afraid to admit that. He's my favorite film composer. He's just barely beating Akira Ifukube. Man, I've got a couple favorite tracks in this movie specifically. The one is, I love the scene where they step outside the barn. I can't hail the scene enough. Where they step outside and they see the army and the music just starts playing. I love that track. The other track I like is called Valencia for the Cid, which is when the people overthrow that really corrupt Muslim king in Valencia and they kill him, and then all of a sudden they open the gates and Charlton Heston comes marching in. Mm-hmm. That music is fucking epic. However, how can I not say that one of the best tracks is the music at the very end of the film where Charlton Heston rides off into the distance and it's slowly swelling and slowly building. And yeah, that's Miklos Rózsa. I mean, watch Ben-Hur. Ben-Hur is just full of that shit. I think this is one of his greatest scores of all time. A genuinely great, phenomenal score, just full of energy. Just listen to it. With headphones, specifically. Or a good surround sound system. And it will just blow you away. It's huge. Huge. And I'm glad it's been restored, too. I'm glad they found the original recordings, because that was actually part of the audio track that was kind of missing for a lot of the restoration, was the music score, a good restoration of the music score. Just wish they do the same thing for his score for Double Indemnity. I love that soundtrack a lot. That wasn't an epic. That was a film noir from the 40s, and I think his score of that film was amazing. So I'm on Amazon trying to find it, and lo and behold, the only thing you get is a re-recording, because they don't have apparently the original raw audio recordings are not available or not being made available. I'm like, oh, come on, guys.
Well, they're not. Yeah, what's happened is a lot of them have been destroyed because of age, and so they have to do these re-recordings. It was like, I just recently found an original recording for Bernard Herrmann's score to Psycho, which is even rarer. And so I was very happy to get my hands on that. But yeah, freaking Miklos Rózsa nailed it. I don't think there's a score where he didn't nail it, including The Golden Voyage of Sinbad.
Wait, wasn't that? Oh, no. You said Golden. I thought you said Seventh Voyage of Sinbad for some reason. No. Okay, yep, okay. So the Seventh Voyage was Herrmann.
I know I said Golden.
Yeah, but I just misheard you.
No idea. He was supposed to score the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, but he was tied up with Ben.
Well, I like Herrmann scoring that film, so.
Me too. Don't get me wrong. I think Bernard Herrmann is fucking masterful. But it would have been interesting to see if Rózsa.
Anyways,
so this is El Cid is a wonderful movie.
It is,
guys.
yes.
Go fucking watch it. It's an everyman epic. Would you say that? It's not too complicated. It's not too simple.
I would say if
loads
you
of
are,
action in it.
Of course, this is kind of rare for audiences these days, but you can actually sit still for 3 hours. I think regardless of your taste in epics, this would be a pretty good one for pretty much anybody.
Just watch it, even if it takes you a couple of days to watch it. Like you watch it for a little bit, and then you stop, and then you continue watching it a little later. I think you're going to really enjoy this movie. I mean, that's how I watch movies a lot. Is what I do is before I go to bed, I watch like about 15 to 30 minutes of a movie, then I'll stop, and then I'll continue the next night. That's how I genuinely watch things. But watch this movie, guys. Watch this movie. Specifically, I highly recommend you get the DVD release of it. The 2-disc special edition release to it, with some loads of great special feature, a phenomenal audio commentary, just chock full of information. It's wonderful, and wonderfully restored. Wonderfully restored. Thank you, Martin Scorsese, for spearheading this restoration and coughing up the money to restore this movie, because it's quite a gem. So, Patrick, what would you rate this masterpiece, or unless you have anything else you should talk about?
I would say that I'd say this film is one of the most visually stunning films I've ever seen in my life. It's a absolutely amazing film. Yeah. It's really beautifully photographed, really made. The only thing visually that's kind of off is the font for the titles. Yeah, they're like a really brown, brownish orange color, and they're kind of semi-transparent with the sketched background. But other than that.
I thought even that's a Bronston trait, is that all of his movies begin with like this art with the text over it, and this is. But
I would say, in terms of what was actually put in front of a camera and photographed, this is an absolutely stunning visual experience. It's a good story. It's got, for the most part, great performances, interesting characters, great score. So in total, I would say this is one of my personal favorite epics of all time, and I'm going to give it a rating of 4.5 out of 5. It's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty close to being there. I think it's an absolutely amazing film. And so, yeah, in short, I do highly recommend this film to anybody who is a fan of epics and just a fan of cinema in general.
I completely agree with Patrick. This film isn't perfect, but it has a lot of great things in it that, in my opinion, outshine those flaws. And in total, I should be giving this a 3.5 out of 4. I really should. But my level of enjoyment for this movie exceeds that, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 4. A 4 out of 4. I'm going to go that far. And I'm actually going to say that this is the top 3 epic. Like, there's Ben-Hur, there's Cleopatra, and then there's El Cid. Those are the 3 big ones, in my opinion. I'm sorry, not Cleopatra, Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia and El Cid. These are the 3 epics that are like you must see before you die. And goddamn, I can't hail this movie enough. I really cannot. Go freaking shut off this review. Buy the fucking DVD, torrent it. I don't give a shit. Just watch it. Damn
it's not an option anymore, apparently.
It's not an option. I'm holding you at gunpoint. All 120 of you that are going to watch this. All right. So, anything you need to pimp out?
Yes. Okay, now that was a imitation of a wad of spit hitting a spittoon. That's what you get. That's what you get when you watch a lot of westerns growing up. Thank you.
Nailed it.
Nailed the spittoon.
You should work it. You should work at this.
But in any event, go to my channel. Lots of stop motion stuff. Lots of reviews. And also, I believe this will probably depend on a certain David Hernandez and whether or not he actually gets his quota to me in time. But I believe by the time this review goes up, we will have uploaded a defense video of Adam's absolute favorite Godzilla film of all time. That.
Oh, well, I was watching Hetero the Douchebag's live chat the other day, his Saturday night chat or whatever, and go subscribe to him. He's actually got a lot of cool things to say. Plug. But Andrew and I actually agreed that we're gonna on something, and that apparently there's some kind of explanation in the video of how the Heisei continuity can actually work with both Space Godzilla and King Ghidorah, and something along those lines. And I'm very interested to hear what that is. So I'm definitely going to be checking it out. I'm excited for it. Just because I absolutely detest this movie,
like I said, it's
that I can't respect.
For those who don't know,
say that with a straight face.
Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, and me, Andrew, aka Blue Eyes, Joe Fazina, and Gorazard are doing a podcast devoted to defending the film and seeing why we personally enjoy it. I think it's not all that awful, although Adam doesn't agree with us whatsoever.
There are things that aren't.
Although Adam's more at this point, Adam's turning into the villagers from Monty Python Holy Grail. A witch, burn the witch.
No.
Yes.
No, I don't know. There are some things with there's no.
It's your least favorite Godzilla film of all time.
It is my least favorite Godzilla movie, but I could still watch it and try not to think too much. It's kind of like, for me, I look at it like Final Wars. If I just plug it in and just mindlessly watch it, I'll watch it. But when I think about it in continuity with the rest of the Heisei series, no.
Nope.
Nope.
But
also, Space Godzilla's design.
Wow, we got some praise there.
Space Godzilla's design.
You're gonna like our opening for the video then, because we made an opening for the podcast. So any event.
Cool.
So the defense video of Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla probably will come out before this, but that's going to depend on Gorazar and whether or not he actually does. Whether or not he does.
Oh God. Why did you guys do this?
He's also a fan
Why
of the
were you
film,
relying
and
on
we thought it'd
him?
be nice to just bring him on. But I actually asked him to do something for me, and because Gorazard, it could be he'll give it to me by tomorrow, or it could be next week, or next year possibly. Yeah, it's true.
Next year.
Little plot spoiler. When we come to the part of the video where we ask him what do you got to pimp out, David, he says, "Well, I've been working on a review for Attack on Titan, but I did that. I started writing it over a month ago. I'm still not finished. Maybe it'll come out in the summer." We tell him, "Yeah, it's gonna be next summer when it actually comes out." But in any event, that video is gonna hopefully be coming up relatively soon. Apart from that, go to Toho Kingdom, read my reviews, check out the interview that I did with Ed Gossezeski, who, in case you don't know who that is, did a lot of the audio commentaries for Classic Media, who writes the fanzine Japanese Giants. We talked about his past history with Tokusatsu. We talked about his ideas on the genre. We talked about his thoughts on what he's expecting with Godzilla Resurgence by Hideaki Anno. We talked about a whole lot of stuff in regards to his placement as a fan of Tokusatsu, so please check that out as well. Okay, now it's Adam's turn to pimp things out.
Well, I have the normal shit to pimp out. Go on Facebook, like the Godzilla Saga. We're almost at 400 likes. 400? No, 500. We're almost at 500 likes. Go on Facebook, like AM Productions for all up-to-date information about everything and everything that I do with my insignificant life. Go on Facebook. Like my new movie, Which Way They Walk, which by the time this is released, we would have wrapped production and post-production would be fully underway. I'm going to announce it here. We are truly expecting, I want, a late April, early May release of the movie. So, hopefully, that will happen.
Never before has a greater story passed the screen with such
I want to make a trailer for that. I want to make a 40s style trailer for this movie since it's made in that style. But also, join Geeks for Geeks, where we talk about a space Godzilla, where Godzilla turns out to be female and dying of diabetes, and turns out to be pregnant, and his real name is Roseanne. Written by the guy who wrote Akira.
Yeah, that story.
So anyway,
you're still gonna die. I mean, adios, everybody.
I'm so excited. I'm pretty sure you're just bluffing me, right, Patrick? Right,
oh,
Patrick?
yeah,
we're
yeah.
good
You only burned down my house and turned me into a mushroom, and
yeah, we're good.
And
yeah, but I sent you an apology letter.
Oh yeah, sure. It was just an apology. Hey, what?
With some flowers.
Yeah, my apology
I'll
means,
make
hey
sure to
Patrick, I'm
send
doing a
flowers.
review. Can you do it?
Adam? What's that?